Hi, Dylan and Molly, and all future Shine a Light Medi-Cal clinicians. So there is a new Carillon provider training manual that I sent you both that goes into a lot of really good detail about a bunch of kind of confusing Medi-Cal things. To avoid confusing you, I'm going to, before we really get into that, show you in e-services, in therapy notes, and then like in our accounting process the basic things you will actually need to do on the computer. So, because I feel like when you get into all the details, it looks really complicated, but when you're just actually doing it, it's fairly intuitive at this point. So this is the e-services portal. I'll show you in a little bit how you get registered for it, but once you have an account, you just go to their link and there's a little section for portals. They just added a two-factor authentication, which I wouldn't ordinarily mention, but it's kind of confusing. They ask, do you have a cell phone that you could use for two-factor authentication? If you click yes to that, you will have to download a Google Authenticator app to do it. If you don't want to do that, you can click no and they'll just send it to your registered email. So just mentioning that. Once you're in, this is their portal. We used to use this for a bunch of stuff, but now almost every single thing that we use this for, you can do in therapy notes, which is way easier and more intuitive than this website was. So pretty much all we're using this for at this point is checking people's eligibility. So you come into eligibility and benefits, and you're going to check eligibility. And the three things you'll need are the member ID, the date of birth, and the last name. So you're going to want to just make sure that you have those three things before you do this process. Okay, so then we're going to go search. Going to look for two things here. Is she eligible? And the answer is yes. So that's a big yes. We'll click on it. And it just shows eligibility. So then the next thing that you want to be super, super careful of is this other health insurance thing. So click that, and this is what you want to see. No record found with 2 dots and 2 exclamation points. Uncharacteristically whimsical for them. But that's the only thing that works in here. Any other health insurance that the person has will make it so that Medi-Cal won't pay us. Medi-Cal is always secondary to everything else. So if they have Medicare and Medi-Cal, it won't work. If they have Blue Shield and Medi-Cal, it won't work. We just had, sometimes a client will say, oh, I called them and they said, don't worry, even though I have this other policy, I'll pay you. We just had this to a clinician, and then all the claims are getting rejected. So you are really going to want to go by what's in this system. Even if what's in this system is wrong, it's what it will defer to. So if the person has a policy that is actually not active, but it's in here erroneously, you still will not be able to bill for them. They need to call CCAH and get that sorted out. You should also keep an ear out. One thing that's happened to me is that a client gets a new job and all of a sudden they have health insurance benefits kicked in, and I've been seeing them for a year or a year and a half, but all of a sudden they have another policy and now their claims aren't covered and they didn't realize that. This is in the manual pretty extensively, but we pay clinicians based off of what we get paid from Medi-Cal. So if the claims get denied, you need to work that out with CCAH and with the client, but we're not paying for claims that were just submitted and then either denied or didn't go through for some reason. So be really careful about this stuff. This is another reason that you really don't want to let your Medi-Cal billing build up. Because if there is a problem, you want to know about it after 1 or 2 appointments, not, 7 or 8 appointments. So this is how you check eligibility. I think this is like one of the most important parts of everything we're going to do today, because everything else, most things can be fixed. But if you check eligibility wrong and then start seeing someone and billing them and not getting paid, that is a huge bummer, and we don't want that to happen. So that is the eligibility checking process. Any questions at all about that?
I'm not quite sure I understood that last thing you had mentioned around who's paying who. Are
Oh,
you?
okay. So when you submit a claim, great, thank you. I'll explain that more clearly. If you submit a claim in therapy notes, that is not the time that you get paid. You get paid 10 to 2 weeks later when Medi-Cal actually writes us a check and approves it. So what that means is, first of all, there's a little bit of a delay that kind of evens itself out over time because you're just sort of 10 days behind. But there's a little bit of a delay. But also it means that if Medi-Cal denies it, you don't get paid. And that's something that like Sal doesn't just pay for it if Medi-Cal denies it. Um, so you want to be really careful that you're only working with people that are actually eligible, and that if there's a problem, you figure it out super quickly by keeping your notes up to date. Did that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. All right. Anything else about checking eligibility? Okay, so once you see that the inquiry that you're working with is eligible and doesn't have other health insurance, then you are going to come and put them into therapy notes. So your therapy notes is going to look a little bit different once I update your settings to be able to bill Medi-Cal. The most annoying part of this is that your to-do list will have a little block on top that shows you a bunch of stuff you don't need to worry about everybody's billing. It also gives you more access to see other people's billing. So please don't look at things that you don't need to look at for confidentiality and privacy reasons, but you will have more access in therapy notes. Don't worry about the new things on your to-do list. If you keep your to-do list perfect and beautiful, it will no longer look entirely perfect and beautiful. So you'll have to train your eyes not to see that one little block at the top. But the way you get somebody set up in therapy notes for Carillon, you go to their billing settings and their insurance will say none. You'll click edit, and then all you need to add is the member ID. And then you'll want to upload the insurance card. Sometimes the clients don't have the actual card, they just have the number. As long as they come up, that's fine. But if you're able to get a copy of the card and upload it here, that's great. You will need to click that they've signed the authorization for release of information. This happens automatically when they sign the insurance version of the informed consent. This will change on their info tab, and then you'll be able to submit claims. So that's all you need to do to get somebody set up in therapy notes. You'll want to make sure not to send them a payment authorization form because that makes it really easy to accidentally charge a credit card that you don't want to charge, and just have this in there. And so then the way you are going to submit, oh, just one quick mistake that you might make. This is the correct policy. It has one in there called CCAH. You will not want to use that. That's not correct. I'm not sure why it got changed in there, but this is the Beacon Health Strategies, BHOVO. Primary is what you are looking for.
I have a
Okay,
question.
yeah.
Are we sending them a insurance form
Mhm.
through the portal?
Yes. And the new document Tim wrote out, it details just what you'll send to a Medi-Cal client and what you'll send to a private pay client. And really the only difference is that the insurance informed consent piece, and then not the payment authorization. So for this client, I just had so if I'm going to look at her billing, what you can see, this is what it looks like now in therapy notes. Now that therapy notes does a lot of the billing, you can see that, hold on, there we go. Okay, so now what it looks like is every time that they send us a check, and I make sure that they're allocated correctly in therapy notes, it shows me which of her claims have been paid and which have not. So it'll say these claims have all been paid on the past month. These have all been submitted and I'm waiting for them to be paid. And then this one is pending, which means it's not yet submitted. So the reason that this doesn't let me submit it right now is because I haven't written the note. depending on how you have your columns sorted, it might show you a due note feature there that will remind you why they're not letting you submit. So you do need to write your note before you bill. It won't let you if the billing is not in. So we'll come here, we'll get the note done. I'm going to talk about notes for Medi-Cal in just a moment, so don't worry about that right now. This note is done. So then once I've written the note, I just go back to her to-do list or to her billing tab. You can find it both ways. And there's a little box that says, or a little link that says submit electronic claims. So I'm going to click on that. This is the claim I want to submit. So I'm going to check the box and I'm going to submit the claim. So that process is pretty straightforward. It's pretty intuitive. The actual claim submission process is not harder than charging a credit card, which is great. I want to talk about the notes really quickly. You do for Medi-Cal have to have a diagnosis for your clients. You can't use a Z code and you can't use the no diagnosis feature and get paid. So you will want to carefully diagnose. And then you'll want to use references to your diagnosis in your notes just to show that you are indeed treating the symptoms of that diagnosis. Those symptoms are present or they're improving, but you'll want to use words that really reference the symptoms of whatever diagnosis you used. Tim walks through that in a lot more detail in the new provider training manual. I still write fairly straightforward, basic notes. I don't include, a ton of content detail. I mostly include like what they reported about the symptoms that we're tracking that week and what some of the content that was exacerbating it was, or some of the things that they did that worked managing it, things that made it better or worse. But I'm not writing super long notes because it's Medi-Cal. I'm still keeping them fairly brief, just directed to showing Medi-Cal that I am treating the diagnosis that I say I'm treating. So that is the therapy notes process, is we will pull your revenue, I'll use my own, from therapy notes. So for example, if I'm doing a revenue report for myself, so if I want to sort by beacon, I always just do in-network payers. And let's look at the current year. And you can see it'll show just the revenue amounts from Beacon. So last month in June, and then if I click on it, it'll show the applicable amount, every payment that I got paid for in June for my Medi-Cal clients. So Therapy Notes actually does a way better job doing the accounting than we did, doing it manually by hand, and it took hours and hours. So that's the process. But if I want to go to my own billing and just look at and see, what of my claims have been paid and what haven't for all of my clients. Let's look at the last 30 days for payer. I'm going to go in network payer again. And this will just show all of my submitted claims for all of my Medi-Cal clients. So you can see I'm waiting on a bunch right now for this month, which will be great. Okay. So those are the main processes actually in the system, in the computer for Medi-Cal. There's the eligibility checking, which is super, super important. Then there's the small updates you need to make to the profile and therapy notes to make sure that they're set up where you add their number in the billing settings tab. Then there's just writing the notes and using the submit claim feature instead of charging a credit card. And then there's, looking at your own billing to make sure you're getting paid the right amount at the end of the month. So those are the, I think, 5 steps that you're actually doing on the computer. So Carillon's got a lot of rules. We'll go over some of the most important ones. You cannot charge or accept money from clients. So if it's for a covered service, or for a late cancellation or missed appointment, we are not able to collect payment from them. So this, in my opinion, is one of the biggest bummers and toughest things, which is that for your Carelon clients, you do not get paid for missed appointments or no-shows. So that sucks. But it's the way it's got to be. What we can do, as Tim mentions, donations are accepted. You can mention to your client that if they miss an appointment, they can donate money to Shine a Light through the website. It's totally voluntary, no pressure at all. If a client has repeated missed appointments, we we officially require that you terminate them if they've missed 3 or more. You don't have to follow this rule, but you can use it in explaining to your clients, or if you're feeling like, this person's not going to keep showing up and I can't keep having no-shows and missed appointments. Medical necessity is like the super important thing, which is just making sure there's a medical necessity for your therapy, for your treatment of them. So you really do need to show that there is a diagnosis that they qualify for, and that the symptoms match that diagnosis. It can be challenging. Use your best judgment, talk to your supervisors about it. At that point, if there is, this document mentions that if they're really no longer medically necessary and you feel like ethically you can no longer bill insurance because you cannot justify the diagnosis anymore, at that point it's no longer a covered service and you could offer to offer therapy for a fee for service using your regular rate. This is just a note on client progress and how to document your progress and document their symptoms. This is a section on couples and family therapy. The way it works is that you charge one client's card. It's treatment for them. They have to qualify for a diagnosis, and you've determined that couples therapy is the best treatment for that diagnosis. So again, it can't be a Z code. They do still have to qualify for a diagnosis. And then this goes over a lot of the ins and outs of how to bill for couples codes. So here's just some quick do's and don'ts. Please do not submit claims electronically if they have other health insurance. Do not submit to Carelon with a medical diagnosis or substance abuse diagnosis as primary. It's got to be a mental illness diagnosis. Don't submit claims using V codes, Z codes, or manifestation codes as primary diagnosis codes. Don't bill members for dates of service that they've been denied or partially paid, and don't bill for no-shows. Please do verify eligibility as we walked through. Use these procedure codes for the different appointments. You can use add-on codes as a part of your assessments, so you can do these assessments and then you can bill for them, and this document walks you how to do that. You're going to want to do it quickly. Do not let your billing build up. So get your notes written and get them submitted within a week. Enter insured, enter units and charges for all. Okay, I don't know what that means. Okay, and then this document that it links you to here, again, walks you through exactly what I walked you through on how to submit the claims. And then here are some evaluations that have add-on codes. So if you do the adverse childhood experience questionnaire for a client, it will give you some information, and Medi-Cal pays $29 for doing it. All you have to do is send it to your client, review their answers, determine the score, and then add it on your billing code. Some people do this and some people don't. If it doesn't feel clinically like the right call for you to send the ACE questionnaire to somebody right away, you don't have to do that. My understanding is that you can also do it later in the treatment if you want. It doesn't have to connect to the first session. But this walks you through exactly how to do it with screenshots. When you're doing your billing, you're just going to click this little add-on code, drop down, shows you exactly how to do it, and then you submit your billing as normal. So this runs you through a couple other add-on codes that you can do. The depression and substance abuse ones, we were trying to figure out if those are getting paid. So proceed with caution on those. I mean, you can definitely do them. We're just not positive if they're being paid yet. And then the rest of this is what to do when you get licensed, which we will cross that bridge when we come to it. There is one note here on submitting claims when the client has other health insurance. It is possible to submit a claim to their insurance to get denied and to have Medi-Cal pay it. In general, we don't recommend it because there's a lot of problems that come up. People run into a lot of issues with it. It's a lot of paperwork. You have to submit a paper claim and go through a process. And then if it doesn't work, it's possible that we still won't get paid. But you can. And maybe sometimes, like I mentioned, you find out too late. You've been seeing them for a while, and then whoops, you forgot to submit your last 5 claims, and then they all get denied because they had another health insurance. You can go through this process as a way to try to get paid. Molly, your question about kind of recourse to trying again here. This is what you can do if they have other health insurance. It walks you through the process. All right. That is the full spectrum of Medi-Cal billing through Shine a Light.